Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. Rest assured, you'll get your money's worth. With this show, it happened all right. You gotta see the show. It's a dynamo. You gotta see the show. It's rock and roll. Oh, right before your eyes. People love to run.
We're rolling.
Well, good afternoon and good evening. This is Dyanne Klinko from Backstage Pass Presents, and I have a great friend of mine that we're going to talk to today, Andrew Colyer. Andrew, hello.
Hi, Dyanne. Hi, everybody.
How are you today?
I am well, and it's a beautiful sunny day here in New York, and we don't get the sun always, and there are no lights on in this room. It's so bright from just the sunshine, and we even have the blinds pulled. So, but
wow.
Yeah, I'm so jealous for you living in California. I would love to live in California.
4 miles from the most amazing beach and pier. And they're catching everything from stingrays that are over 50 and 60 pounds.
Wow.
To they do the night fishing where they're after the short fin mako shark, and they're after a hammerhead if they're lucky. That's very rare. But the other shark that is real popular, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but the mako is the big catch because they're a fighter. They'll jump out of the water and they'll really, really make you work. And that could be a 2.5 hour event of trying to pull them in. And so it's very sporting.
That's awesome.
So tell me something. I understand, of course, that you have several questions that have been sent over to you, which I'll be anxious to get to. But first, I think it would be great to have you talk about the different instruments that you play and give a kind of introduction as to what you do, and we can go from there.
Okay. So you know what? As part of answering that question, let me give you a little bit of background about myself, because some people know who I am and some people have no idea who I am. Why are you interviewing me on this ELP Titans of Prague website? So my name is Andrew Colyer, and for some people have a hard time pronouncing my last name because of the spelling. So I always say to people, think call your mom, think call your dog, and then say Andrew Colyer, and then you'll get it right. So
perfect, Colyer.
So I was a professional musician at a young age. And
what age was that?
Well, I started playing the piano when I was 3. So I started when I was 3, and I started singing and playing the trumpet also at a very young age. My first my first recital, I was probably 5 or 6, and the first time I started singing in public was probably 7, 8, 9 or 10, 4th grade. I had to lead in like the school play playing Santa Claus. And I was really skinny, so they had to give me a pillow to try to make me larger. So that was fun.
Well,
and
I don't mean to interrupt, but did your parents give you a lot of influence to start this musical training at such an early age?
My mom started taking me for piano lessons because she taught me how to read by the time I was 3. And then we found a teacher who said, well, I've never had somebody this young, but since he can read, we'll try it. And he was a great guy. He was really a jazz teacher at the local college. And so I started with him. And So anyway, I did a lot of music, trumpet, voice, piano, all throughout high school. I started playing for churches in the 5th grade. I started playing for weddings in the 7th grade. I started playing bars and restaurants, at 14 when I got freshman in high school. And I did that all throughout college and my early 20s, and I was a DJ. And I really wanted to go to Berklee College of Music, and actually, but my family was not supportive. I come from a medical family, so they were not supportive of me pursuing music as a career. So I wound up majoring in classical piano performance and pre-med in college on the 5-year plan. So, college was still, even though I could play rock, and I did a little bit of jazz and plenty of pop stuff. I could listen to anything on the radio and play it, but it was mostly, Rachmaninoff and Chopin and Beethoven and Liszt and Bach and those kinds of things.
Same as ELP started out too, with all the classical music, and then kind of merged from there. So you're right in there with them.
Yeah. So my parents, I really wanted to go to Berklee College of Music, but my parents didn't support that. So I put music, I would say I would put it on a back burner on simmer for over 20 years.
Wow.
And while my life went in another direction, and I always had my hand in it, I always wanted to do it. And I was, the musician part of me was very depressed for over 20 years, even though other parts of my life were okay. But that part of me was my soul was really not happy. And then in 2011, we'll just say that we took music career from the back burner and moved it to the front burner and turned it up on high. Because I just got to a point where that part of me I could no longer deny that part of myself, and I was depressed. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to my deathbed not having really, really tried, really do it. Like, I'm going to do it. I don't even know what it is, but I'm going to do it. So
good for you. Good for you, Andrew. I think music is born into your soul, and I think that once it's in there, it's a passion that you can't ignore. And even if you put it on the back burner, it's always there. And whether you're singing or playing an instrument, it's calling you all the time. And it's hard to ignore. And I agree with you. I think you get to a point where enough thinking about it. I'm going to do something about it.
It was
good for you.
Oh, thank you. It was a real snapping point for me. And in fact, I had a friend of mine, actually a composition teacher, said to me, she said, I think if you really have a calling to be an artist and you don't do it, it creates mental illness. And I can say that
I agree.
Me, it was bad. That was bad. And then you just get tired of complaining. You get tired of yourself complaining. And I thought, you know what? For me, I thought, I'm going to live those years anyway. I already know. What's funny is that life is about joy and suffering. And I'm either going to have the suffering of trying to start a career in my 40s, or I'm going to have the suffering of never tried, of never having done it, of not doing anything, continuing to not do anything, complaining about it all the time. And I already did that for over 20 years. So I already know what's going to happen if I don't do anything. So at least if I'm doing something, and there's suffering involved, at least I'll be the suffering of trying to make something happen.
I love it. I absolutely love how your mind is thinking. So excellent. Absolutely excellent.
So I just jumped in and started doing one thing. I did something else, and things kind of started happening. And along the way, I met Robert Berry, and I developed my relationship with him over time. And then, he called me, and as you probably know, if you're watching this video, Robert was with Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer in the 80s.
Yeah.
And they did the 3 album. They did a North American tour. They came home. They started on a second record, and then for a lot of reasons they broke up. Keith and Robert got back together 30 years later in 2015, 2016, started working on the follow-up album. Tragically, Keith passed away. Yeah. Robert finished the record, released it. in August of 2018 on the Frontiers label. It went to #1 on Amazon. It sold out in 5 countries on the first day. And then Robert needed to tour the album, and he, you know, by the grace of God, fortunately, he called me to fill in for Keith because Keith's, you know, not available. So I feel very fortunate. I feel very grateful. I just want to stay up front that Keith is one of the greatest keyboard players in the history of rock music. And if he were still alive, I would not have the job. I really felt like I was just filling in because he was not available. So Robert called me. I'm looking at a calendar if you want to look at it. Robert called me in March of 2018 before the album came out because he knew he was going to want to tour it. And we had we were trying to launch in the fall of 2018, and we had some management issues. So because of changing management and scheduling and whatnot, we didn't tour until the fall of 2019, and we did a 29-date North American tour, which is awesome. And
I was there.
You were there. That was great. And
I was there in San Pedro, and what a show! You know, you actually made me cry when I heard the intro to Carnival 9. That intro made me immediately close my eyes because you're playing right there. I mean, everything is just like Keith. And I closed my eyes and I felt like I was back in 1970 and that I was hearing Keith and thinking about Keith. And when the band started going, I had my eyes open, of course, by then, but I still was full of tears because you and the 3.2 band that Robert was, yes, the rules have changed, and that was with Robert Berry. And you guys, your timing is just so on point, and you really have your act together, and you are so talented on your keyboard that you absolutely blew my mind. And I was so just in awe watching you guys play. I couldn't get enough. I can't wait to see you guys come back and do some more tours so that you can come to Southern California.
We plan to come back, you know, as if you're watching this live or on the replay at the time of this video filming, the world is kind of on lockdown from the coronavirus COVID situation.
Right.
And we had some tour dates lined up for this year, but they've been rescheduled for the future. So we plan to come back to the West Coast. I think we're going to be doing some of those dates with Big Big Train.
Okay. Can you explain Big Big Train? Because I'm sure there are a lot of our members that are not familiar with that, because that was a UK band, correct?
Correct. They've been around about 20 years. And for lots of reasons, they never toured internationally, but they've developed quite a large fan base. So they did some touring in Europe, but they always mostly play in England. And they've developed quite a following around the world. And they're a large, 11 people, 13 people. It's a big band, but they're amazing. They're fantastic. I could go on and on, but they're really great. So for the first time, they were finally going to come to the United States this year, and we were going to do a bunch of shows with them. They were going to play at Rozfest, but you know, with everything being closed, so those shows have all been rescheduled for the future, either 2021, maybe 2022. We're not sure when everything will come back, but we will be back, and we will be back. Some shows with them, some by ourselves. We have European tour dates that are also being rescheduled. That'll be, as far as I know, it was England, France, Germany, Italy, maybe the Netherlands. We had some things in the Midwest scheduled. So we will definitely be back. And right now, Robert Berry.
Oh, hang on.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I took my earbuds
out.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, so right now, Robert Berry is still working on the next 3.2 album, which will be the third 3.2 album, and that will be out. I believe the tentative date, because of the lockdown situation, they were going to release it this year, but I think they're going to hold back until maybe January of next year, and then tie that into some tours and whatever, and there'll be some video releases and whatnot. So there's more music coming. We appreciate everyone listening and coming out to the shows and watching videos, and thank you for watching this video, and can't wait to see you in person again. Oh, can you put your earbuds? I've lost your audio. Are you? Can't hear you. You were fine until you took your earbuds out. I can't hear you. I'm gonna pause the recording. Should I pause the recording?
Okay, so we were talking about
tour, but we're going to be back on tour, and Robert's working on that third record.
And can you release the name of that third album?
I don't know what it is, so no.
I guess I'll have to try and get it out of Robert Berry.
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, it will be announced, I'm sure, soon. And we are really looking forward to hearing that. And I want to thank you. And I know my members and everyone watching want to thank you and your 3.2 band for keeping the ELP music alive and in amazing, what's the word? Your band just plays that ELP and some Yes, yep, and some, I think it's Moody Blues.
Well, we did, let's see, we did a, I
have a list here.
Yep, we do some Genesis, we do Jethro Tull, we do, and let me explain that, because if for those of you who don't know, Robert Berry is kind of like the American version of Trevor Rabin, in that he's a producer, he's a songwriter, he's a multi-instrumentalist, he can do it all.
Yes.
It's really kind of disgusting.
Yes, and he's good at it.
And he's really good
at it. Yes.
So the thing is, Robert was on a label called the Magna Carta label back in the 90s, and they were kind of keeping prog alive, because the classic years of prog were 1968 to 1978. That was really the heyday. Yeah. Then we had the 80s, which is actually, I came to progressive rock late in the 80s, and to me, Genesis meant Invisible Touch, and Yes meant Odor of a Lonely Heart, because that's how I got exposed to it, because I'm just behind that generation. Then I had to kind of go back and relearn it all. So in the 90s, it was kind of the grunge era, and prog was kind of
on the back burner. That's right. It took over disco, right?
Yeah, right. It was all kinds of stuff was happening. So in the 90s, the Magna Carta label was keeping prog alive by putting out these kind of compilation records and reimaginings. So they went to Robert, and Robert would do these reimaginings of, okay, if Yes was going to redo Roundabout now in the 90s and make it a little heavier and make it groove harder and throw in a little Led Zeppelin, and and today's synthesizers, what would they do? So that's how we wind up. So these are Robert Berry's versions of Roundabout. Actually, even of Carnival 9. Carnival 9 sticks to the original formula of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but he's got some rockin' stuff. We have the Jordan Rudess version of Keith Emerson of Carnival 9, which is actually one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life. It was really, really, really hard.
Oh, I mean,
it was ridiculous. It was really,
because I couldn't. Oh, I was watching you play Carnival Night. I know, and you were just everywhere. And I kept thinking to myself, I don't know how you've learned it and been able to get that speed up that Keith always had. And that, I would imagine, is a real challenge if you're not used to, you know, playing at his pace. But your timing is perfect. Everyone's timing. You guys are all synced. You're very professional, and you make ELP come alive again. And everyone should be coming to see you wherever you go.
Thank you.
Everyone should come see you, truly.
Well, a lot of it is, I call it the choreography, because it's almost harder than classical piano, because in classical piano, you just sit down on a stage and it's just you and the piano, and that's it. All you have to do is learn the notes and perform the notes. But for this, I've got a bottom keyboard, a top keyboard. I've got a rolly. I've got the guitar. You know, the shoulder. You know, I've got on the floor. I sing backup on every song, and I've got the harmony things. I've got a computer, and I have to do tap dancing on the floor, changing the patches of all the songs. So sorry. Then I've got also I've got an iPad with the notes and stuff. I have to tap on that on the floor. So it's just tap dancing and fingers playing, and so, you know, and then some nights you can't see very well, or the lights are in your face, and
oh no. Let me ask you something too.
So sorry.
That's okay.
Wow, I'm at work. Nobody ever calls on a Saturday.
Well, you're very popular.
Wasn't expecting.
Good. I'm curious. You have a piece of equipment that sits. If you're sitting this way, it's on the side over here, and it's a very unusual piece of equipment that do you know what I'm talking about?
It's called a Rolly Seaboard. It's black. Yeah.
Yes.
It's called a
and I've never seen one before, and I was I was like, oh man, you know, what is that? And so I was listening, you know, for you when you would play it, and even how you play it seems very different than the basic keyboard setup. And I'm thinking between the keyboard kind of guitar and, you know, and the foot pedals and the computer and the notes you have to play, the timing you have to remember. Andrew, how do you do it?
First of all, let me just say it's awesome and ridiculous. that's my phrase for it. Awesome and ridiculous. So the Rolly, for those of you who don't know, the Rolly Seaboard is made. The keyboard bed is made of neoprene rubber. So you know what? Think of it as a fretless keyboard. You know, when you have a guitar is fretless. This is like a fretless keyboard, so you can slide your finger up and down. You can you can do vibrato the way that a violin player or a string player would, and it's incredibly expressive, and it's just the coolest thing. And so I got a stand, and I have it tilted outward towards the audience, so that when I put my hands down and I'm playing it, it's all black and my fingers are white. You can really see, me, you know, doing vibrato, or you can see my fingers sliding around. There's a ribbon on the top and the bottom. It is.
And you know, I've got some pictures of you playing that, and I'll be posting those along with the interview, so people can see exactly what you're talking about if they haven't seen it before. Because it really is a piece of equipment that just catches your eye, wondering,
what is that?
What is this? Yeah, and what are you going to do with it?
Right. Well, that's one of the things about being a keyboard player is that guitar players are always cool. You know, it's hard to be a keyboard player and be cool, because you're just never as cool as the guitar players ever. So that's one of the reasons that I think Keith Emerson was so inspiring for so many people, is he was so groundbreaking. He was flamboyant, and he was the Jimi Hendrix of the keyboards.
Oh, yes.
You know, he was
yes,
all over.
He was.
Now, I could jump around, but I'm at this point, the way that keyboards are made, I would break something, you know, or hurt.
I don't know how you could get over all that equipment anyway, because you have quite a setup.
Yeah, I would. And Keith, you know, Keith did have on the Moog modular, he had the keyboard, and he had his tech build like a flamethrower into it. He'd be like,
yeah.
You know.
I know, I love watching him do that. I think he had a lot of fun doing that.
Right. So we're always, I mean, for me anyway, as a keyboard player, I'm trying to think of what's something that I can do that will be, that will either show some technology, or that will look kind of cool, or it'll look different, or, you know, something that's, and still be functional. You know, like I can't make something cool just to look cool, because it's got to, you know, I have to be able to use it as a piece of equipment. So a lot of thought, you know, months of thought and work and programming with the computer. A lot of time went into planning, you know, exactly how this particular keyboard rig on tour was going to go.
I can imagine, and even having that equipment moving from city to city, you have to be so careful with that. That must be in itself quite a job.
Yeah.
To make sure that equipment is staying.
It's,
you know,
it's a ton of work, but it's a ton of fun. You know, we love doing it. So, you know, we were happy to bring the music to the people. And it was so nice to meet people at the show, just like yourself, every night. You know, every night there were people, you know, you guys were so fortunate to meet Keith. I never got to meet Keith. So.
Oh, I didn't either.
Oh, I thought you. There were.
No, I didn't meet Greg, Keith, or Carl until Carl did the Legacy tour.
Oh,
that was the first time I met him. I think I took a little bit more time than I was supposed to. By the way, the first time I met him, because I was like, somebody's me, I'm paying.
The first time I met Carl was in 2013 on the very first cruise to the Edge. I was on the very first cruise to the Edge as a passenger. I just had to go as soon as I found out about it. Like the very split second, I'm like, I gotta go. So
I wish I could have gone. I know when that came out. That was
pin.
like,
I love your pin, your ELP pin, by the way. You got.
Oh yes, and then I have my Keith, and I have my Keith. My little Keith reminder that a friend of mine gave me that, and
that's wonderful. So, I'm happy for everyone who got to meet Keith and Greg and Carl, but I never got to meet him in person. So for me, once Robert called, I had to really start doing my homework. Not that I hadn't, because I was in before my band Circuline came into existence, we were part of a progressive rock tribute band named Downing Gray. So in Downing Gray, we would do 3-hour progressive rock shows. We did Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes, Genesis, Jethro Tull, UK, Gentle Giant, Rush, King Crimson,
wow,
Pink Floyd, and we did some Zeppelin. So we would do 9 or 10 bands a night, and I was having to cover all the keyboard parts for all those bands. So, you know, I had done some homework, but then when Robert called me in March of 2018, I just thought, you know, I've got to really immerse myself. So I started re-listening with all the albums. I had purchased that big 50th anniversary huge black box that has all the albums in it. Got all the videos. I started watching videos of Keith. I read his biography. I read other people's biographies. You know, I just thought I have to own it. So I've got to immerse myself in that world.
That was quite a biography that Keith wrote. I thought it was very true to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And he really shared a lot of his life that we normally would not have known.
Right.
I mean,
and he's funny.
He did.
So funny. Really.
Oh, for a guy who rode motorcycles, scuba dived, flew airplanes, and was great with the bow and arrow, and I'm sure there was a couple of others that I can't think of right now. But he would just, it's almost like fear was not a part of his,
right.
you know.
Right.
Yeah, but when he was on stage, he broke ribs. He fell off the stage once. And when he ran to get back into the area where he could go back on the stage, the security wouldn't let him on.
Right, they didn't know who he was.
And he didn't have the right credentials
Right.
to get past. And he kept saying, I got to finish the show. And somebody rescued him, but he was panicked. He was, God, he can't even get back on the
Greg would probably be like, hey, where'd he go? We're going to keep playing. He'll be back in a minute.
I'm sure he's just, you know. But that to me was hilarious. I thought that was one of the funniest things out of the book. And you never would have known those things, you know, that he injured himself, broke his nose, I think, on the spinning piano once.
Ow.
Or what happened was the spinning piano was going fine, but then it kind of stopped suddenly, and Keith went forward.
Spinning and whammo, yeah.
Yeah, hit his nose. But, you know, even when he gets injured, doesn't seem to matter. He jumps right back in there. But I'm thinking, God, he did all these other things, never got injured, never had a problem.
Oh, right.
On stage. But, you know, it's a part of his showmanship. I think that his love for his fan base was important.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that ELP, when they got together, sat down and said, you know, we're not after the albums. We're after the shows. So all their music that they were creating were geared towards the concert.
That makes sense.
And not so much the album. The album was fine, but they wanted the big, you know, they wanted to just wow you. And I thought that really worked.
Yeah, that did work. So
yeah.
We have some.
So do you want to, I was just going to get to that. Do you want to answer some questions that we have?
Sure. So one question is, how long have I played keyboard? So I've been playing the piano since I was 3. The first keyboard I ever bought was in 1990 when I got out of college, and I was not going to Berklee College of Music, and I was going in another direction professionally, but I had to get I had to play, and I didn't have a piano. So in 1990, I bought my first keyboard, and then I've been slowly accumulating them over the years. And at this point, I'm fortunate enough to be a Roland artist, also a Korg artist, Arturia, that Rolly Seaboard that you mentioned. A lot of great companies. I don't want to go on a list of a whole bunch of stuff. They can find it on my website, but there's a lot of great keyboard manufacturers out there, and Moog, of course, you know, synthesizer, you know, Amps had mentioned that. So let's see. Do I play any other instruments? Okay, so yes, I played the trumpet for 10 years in high school and college. I haven't done that for a long time. I really miss playing my horn, actually, but there's just only so many hours in the day, and at this point, keyboards and singing is plenty. How hard was it to learn the Emerson parts? Dude, it was so hard. It was absolutely as hard as anything classical-wise I've ever learned. Absolutely.
Oh, I can
Beastly.
imagine.
Beastly. And then when we do the on Carnival 9, the Jordan Rudess, version of the Keith Emerson stuff, that was also beastly. It's
Oh, I can imagine because the timings were changing so
I mean,
abruptly.
yeah. Do I read music?
Yeah.
Do I read music? Yes. How challenging? And let me make a point about that too. I think that learning to play by ear is a very valuable function, and I think learning to read music is a valuable function. I think they work different parts of your brain, and there's no right or wrong. But I think it's important to develop both, to be able to play by ear and be able to read.
Makes sense.
How challenging is it to work with Robert Berry and really any of your bandmates? That's a great question, and it was not challenging at all. Actually, those Robert Berry and Jimmy Keegan on drums and Paul Keller on guitar are actually, I have to say, it's the easiest group of guys I've ever worked with in my entire life. They're great guys. They're professional. Everybody's polite and nice. Nobody's got an ego problem. Nobody's a jerk. Because let me tell you, you get on a bus with somebody you don't know for like 8 weeks. If you got somebody,
that can get ugly.
Man, I mean, I've had like little mini tours where I was in a bus or a van with somebody for 3 days and I was ready to kill them. So, a long weekend and you're ready to do something. Robert is. I mean, everybody's great. And just in case you don't know, Paul Keller, the guitarist from 3.2, was actually in the original 3 tour in 1988 with Keith and Carl in North America. He was the guitar player on that tour, and he plays the guitar that he played with Keith and Carl on tour, and he's great. And Jimmy Keegan, he's wonderful. And Jimmy Keegan, our drummer, he's fantastic. He was with Foxbeard for 15 years. He's played with John Waite. He's played, I mean, I could go, there's a long list of really famous people. He's done stuff like Tony Orlando. He's been doing it his whole life. He was an actor as a child and a musician as a child. And that's all he's ever done for 40 years. And he's unbelievable. So those guys, it was great. They're great.
They are. When I got a chance to sit down with these guys, they were like old buddies. I mean, just so quickly. It's like you said, there is no ego, and it's more like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? And asking a couple of questions, and you're just like, oh yeah, I didn't, let me tell you, and you're just casual. And I love it because it makes it so easy for their fan base to come up and meet them. They're just very open, and I can tell all of you love the people that come and see you, and
we're grateful. If it weren't for you guys coming to see us, we would be home. We wouldn't get to go out on tour. So we're always, we're grateful for everybody. Okay. So here's a funny question. One person wants to know where the infamous dude language comes from. What's up, buddy? Dude, what's up, dude? Dude. So, we got these questions in advance, and I actually looked this up on Google. It goes back hundreds of years. So there's European origins. There were some things that, there was the surfers who called people dude, and it really started coming out in more popular culture in the 1980s. So there was Fast Times at Ridgemont High was a movie. There was a guy like Spicoli, like dude, and there was a.
Oh yeah, that was a great movie, by the way. Recommend it.
We could go on about that for a long time.
I know, right?
So somebody said I need to just turn off my brain, which they're probably right.
I remember that one.
You know what? And just for the record, I want to give some shout outs for the people who sent in some questions, because I haven't said anybody's name. Thank you, David Harris. Thank you, Ron Matthews. Thank you, Robert Schindler. Thank you, Adrian Woods. Thank you, Dwayne Farrell. Thank you, Gary Shopmeyer. we get some more people, we'll throw some more stuff out there. Okay, so here's a question.
Do you want to take a break from the questions and go back to talking and then go back, or would you like to go
whatever you want?
No, it's whatever you want. You're the person.
I'm just going through the questions. Whatever we don't answer here.
Why don't you just keep going then? Because these questions are great.
Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, who do I think is the Mount Rushmore of Prague? Is that your question? Or somebody else? Okay.
Yes, that is
Dyanne Klinko.
Well, I have an idea of who I think the Mount Rushmore groups are, but I was really curious as to where you felt these 4 bands make the mountain.
I'm going to answer this 2 parts. I'm going to answer the Mount Rushmore for keyboard players, and I'm going to answer Mount Rushmore for bands. Okay, so what I will say is for bands, I have to start with I feel like I have to start with King Crimson, Yes, and Genesis. Now I know we got a lot of Emerson, Lake and Palmer fans here who might be very upset that I didn't listen yet, but if you're looking at a band like the first 3, King Crimson kind of started the whole genre with Court of the Crimson King. And Yes and Genesis are so massive. You know, they continued into the 80s. They still, Yes is still, Yes cruised the edge. Like you have to mention Yes. And King Crimson is still touring. So there's 2 bands still touring. Genesis, even though they went in different directions, they still kept going. They have another tour planned. So I have to lift those 3. And for me, I'm going to, much as I love Emerson, Lake and Palmer, much as I love them, if I only get 4, I got to pick Steven Wilson.
That's all you get.
I got to pick Steven Wilson because to me, Steven Wilson is the modern guy who's still continuing and he's still progressing. He's got progressive roots. He does rock. He does some electronic. He does stuff, but he's remixing all of the classic prog, albums. So that's my 4. And then if I had to pick 4 keyboard players, okay, well, it's going to be Keith Emerson. It's going to be Eddie Jobson from UK. Eddie is phenomenal. I think you probably have to throw in Rick Wakeman just because he was so huge with you.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
If you're going to throw in I hate to leave out Tony Banks because he's such a great writer. But if you're going to look at the players, you have to throw in. You got to throw in Jordan Rudess just because he's like the 400-pound gorilla, for the last 20 years. So I still want to throw Tony Banks in there because he's such an amazing writer. But anyway, maybe we can have like a second tier of Mount Rushmore. So that's kind of my that's off the top of my head. So
very, very good. Very good. I have my 4. I know. I told you that if you share with me your 4 groups, I'll share with you my 4 groups. And of course, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes, Genesis, especially. I like the Peter Gabriel period. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is just so excellent, and so is Selling England by the Pound. I mean, these are songs that are just, to me, they're ageless. And then, of course, I have to add Pink Floyd. I've seen them play. I knew you were going to go there.
To me, I don't really think Pink Floyd is that proggy. Are they great? I think they're great. To me, they're more rock.
What? I have to agree with that.
They're more. Almost everything is in 4, and they're fantastic. I don't. But
Oh yeah,
Totally amazing,
shows.
but I don't think they have, and I could be totally wrong, and people are totally welcome to please help educate me because I came to this genre late in life. But to me,
yeah, you can educate me too.
I don't see the level of when I think of progressive, I think of the level of virtuosity that's there, which Pink Floyd is amazing, but I don't see that kind of virtuosity. Now, some people may argue they don't see that with Steven Wilson, but Steven is a modern day genius to me, so I would throw him in there. So, but I get your Floyd. I'll see your Floyd.
Well, I'm thinking about the very first prog album I ever heard, because all I had been listening to was the top 40 on the local radio station. And I had no albums. I had absolutely no albums. Everything was the 45s that you could get for like 75 cents as opposed to like $2.99. And I mean, I had to save some babysitting money, and I thought, well, why would I buy an album if the one song I hear on the radio is what I like, and I might not like the other songs? So, I was very, very young, and I had a friend come over with 4 albums under his arm. He had BSS. He had Pink
BSS.
Brain Salad Surgery. And he had the Yes album. He brought Wish You Were Here, and he brought The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
I'm writing that down now. You did that all at once. You did that all at once.
He laid them out, and he said, which one would you like to hear first? Because I'm thinking to myself, oh my, because he asked me, he said, let me see your album collection, because I was singing at the time and doing some just garage bands and just, parties and whatnot, not, anything really big, but it was a lot of fun. And he thought automatically that I would have like this huge album collection. When I told him I only had 45s, he looked at me like, that's disgusting. So he brings these albums. Well, I could not take my eyes off of H.R. Giger's work on that Brain Salad Surgery album. And I kept looking at it, but I'm looking at the guy on fire. And, I'm trying to decide between the two, but it's like I thought, this looks really dark, but I can't take my eyes off of it. So I said, okay, play that one. I didn't even know who the artist was. And he told me, he said, well, this is Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I said, oh, okay, whatever they are. And the first prog song I ever heard that he played was Toccata.
Wow.
With all the Moog and synthesizers, how Carl had his drum kit set up with the synth. And I sat there and listened to this in total, it's like, I've never heard these sounds before. And I'm usually always quick with comments when someone asks me about a song or something. And so my friend sat there and looked at me and said, so what did you think?
And that's the first song of the whole album?
I was
that after the first song of the album?
Oh, yeah.
First song.
Yeah. And I was stumped. And I was trying to think of the right words, but my brain couldn't get my mind wrapped around what I had just heard. And so I looked at him finally and I just said, play more. And so he went right to Carnegie Line, which he hit me hard. And I was so hooked that fast. I said, you have to leave these albums with me because I want to go through every one of them now. And it seemed like everyone had their own style of music. They had their own way of playing. And I felt different reactions. Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. I mean, that was very different than the BSS album that I had just totally. I know, right? But then there was Yes, that had some amazing lyrics, Close to the Edge, just holy mackerel, that one got me. And The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, so well written, and it makes you think about what the words mean. And so each one of those albums, to me, had a different effect. But I kept going back to Brain Cell Research.
You know what? Now that you said that, everything you just said, each had a different effect. I like that. I will revise my Mount Rushmore, because Mount Rushmore is probably going to be all the classics. Like you don't have a modern day president on Mount Rushmore. It's all the older presidents, right? So what I'll do is I'll take off from my bands of Mount Rushmore. I will take off Steven Wilson and I'll put ELP on there. So that would be ELP, Yes, Genesis, and funny, I don't even listen to King Crimson that much, but to me they kind of started. But they started in 1968, and they're still touring to this day. So King Crimson, ELP, Yes, Genesis. That'll be my Mount Rushmore classics, and then the modern one, because Jordan is as awesome as he is. He's not one of those original guys. So what do we have for my keyboard player Mount Rushmore? It'd have to be Keith, Eddie Jobson. What did I say? Rick Wakeman, and now I can throw Tony Banks back in. We'll have Tony Banks.
I do too. And Rick Wakeman, even though I know Keith had just such an amazing, like I said, performance on stage, that was, you just were like this. But when I saw Yes for the first time, and Rick had this long blonde hair with this gold sequenced cape. And even though he didn't move around a lot, he was still somebody that I kept watching, because he was going like this. It was the first time I ever saw anybody do two sides, and I'm like, how in the world can you watch?
You know what?
Sides?
It's actually easier sometimes. It's actually easier. Yeah, it's actually easier to put your hands out to the sides. Because I've had rigs set up like that before. I don't know why. It's kind of fun. I actually would like to go back to doing that again myself, but we don't have this. Sometimes we have the space on the stage, and then I got to bring more gear, which is more space in a van and a bus. It's more stuff to plug in. It's more. So anyway, so that's our Mount Rushmore question. And you know what? You told me something, and I have to tell you this story because you'll appreciate this. So I'm late to the prog world, and growing up, I was an ELO Styx Kansas Journey guy. Okay, that was my generation, and so I grew up listening to. You said the top 40, like I was Casey Kasem's, American Top 40, and a bit, with Casey Kasem. So I was top 40 guy, or whatever my parents were listening to, which was like easy listening. It was a whole different thing. So
my parents did country.
Oh wow, okay. Well, your brain definitely was exploding when you got over product.
Well, after I heard the first album, the BSS album, I took my radio, unplugged it, walked to my little brother's room, and I said, "Would you like to have this?" And he goes, "Really?" And I said, I'll never listen to it again. I was done. and I started saving money for my first album.
Oh, that's a great.
DSS. I started out with that one. That was my very first prog album that I bought. I was so proud. I had an album.
That's great.
It's great how people have these stories about prog and how they first heard them. And I'd love for people to go on your site and just talk a little bit about what their experience was when they heard their first
sure, that'd be great.
And I would love to get comments like that and be able to read
That'd be great. We could put together stuff for that. In the fall, so I grew up listening to rock and top 40 and those kind of bands, and then classically trained in piano, voice, and trumpet. Then in college, and especially in the 90s, I started doing some jazz. I took some jazz lessons. I had a jazz quartet. I was doing a lot of weddings and parties and things, playing jazz. That was part of the back burner years. I could never figure out how to put it all together. I was like, it was like class. It was like rock and pop and classical and jazz and movie soundtracks. I always, I had lots of vinyl of movie soundtracks. I kind of wanted to be a movie composer. Especially a lot of science fiction. So I always wanted to be a film composer. Could not figure out for the life of me how to put it all together. So in the fall of 2004, and I want you to think about that. I want you to think about never hearing what you really consider prog until 2004. It's kind of mind blowing. So I meet this new guy. He's a guitar player. His name's Dan. Thank you, Dan, for getting me to this whole world. And he goes, what? He goes, you're classically trained? He goes, you should be playing prog. And I go, what? What is that? And remember, I was a DJ for 4 years too, and I still didn't know what he was talking about. He goes, progressive rock. I go, I don't know. I have no idea what you were talking about. He goes, like, yes. And I go, oh, Owner of a Lonely Heart. And he goes, no. He goes, it's like Genesis. And I'm like, oh, Invisible Touch. He's like, no.
You were going for the songs that the radio may play.
He goes, like Peter Gabriel. I go, Peter Gabriel's never in Genesis. He goes, he goes, okay, I'm going to. So he came back the next week and he goes, I have something for you. And he handed me the Yes Symphonic Live DVD. And I went home and I put it on and I freaked out. I was like, ah!
That's what your mind is doing, right?
I freaked out so much that I literally I could only watch 20 minutes at a time because I was like, this is how it's supposed to be. They had the rock, they had the orchestra, they had the singing, they had it had everything. Odd meters, sophisticated technical playing, they had everything was together in one thing. And it literally took me a week to go through that 3-hour concert because I couldn't listen to more than 20. I couldn't watch more than 20 minutes at a time. My brain was just going crazy. So anyway, and then here we are today. So all right, so.
And it was interesting because my friend, after listening to Toccata, he says, "So how many band members do you think are in Emerson, Lake and Palmer?" I said, well, there has to be a keyboard player. I go through the list. I said, there has to be a keyboard player and there has to be a drummer. I said, there could be a singer by himself, or he may be playing probably not so much lead, but maybe rhythm guitar. And I said, then you've got a lead guitarist. And I said, now about the sounds that are coming out, that may be another person that's controlling that. So I said, there could be them probably 5. And he looks at me and smiles. He goes, there are 3 guys doing that. I said, no way. You're wrong. You have to prove that to me. He goes, Emerson, Lay and Palmer, drummer, singer, and keyboard and guitar player, or bass player, excuse me, and Emerson, keyboard. I go, you've got to be kidding! And put out that sound.
Right. Is this right?
Very hard to imagine.
Okay. Somebody asks, what didn't Carl like about playing live with the LP? I mean, I could guess, but I do not have any personal knowledge of the answer to that question. Do you know? I don't know. They would speed up and slow down a lot. I don't know, but you liked it or didn't like it, but I don't know. Someone has some nice comments. Thank you, Dwayne Farrell, about me. He just, whatever. Okay. Now, somebody asks, why didn't ELP release Oh My Father as a single? I ranked that song up there with Lucky Man. It features Greg's electric guitar soloing, layered with Keith's virtuosic skills on the piano. As always, Carl provided the right amount of texturing on the drums. Oh My Father, in my opinion, could have been in the top 10 Billboard chart as a single. Why didn't ELP include Oh My Father on any original albums, not compilation works? Thanks. Well, Gary Shaw, that's a great observation. I don't know the answer to that question. Do you have any idea, Dyanne? What do you think?
You know, I'm not sure unless they had a set of songs and they were putting them in the priority of what they wanted on the album and how they wanted the album to flow. And that's the only thing that I can think of, but I'm guessing.
Right.
So that's just, I guess that's just my, that's the first thing coming to my head, but I don't have the answer. I don't know.
You know what? I didn't research when that song came out on a compilation album, but what I will say is that, you know, Dyanne, you're right in that on a piece of vinyl, on a front and back of a piece of vinyl, you're looking at about 44 to 45 minutes worth of music. And maybe maybe it was a great song that didn't make the cut as far as a collection of songs when they were putting songs together for a record, and they just didn't have room for it. So they had it, you know, they had it in the can, and they just said, hey, let's throw it on this compilation album.
I'm sure they had a lot of songs that were in that can too that they used later.
Okay. I think that's all the questions we have for right now. Was there?
They're great questions, and I want to thank everyone for sending them over to challenge Andrew here. And you did a great job in getting those answers.
Was there anything else that you wanted to ask? I think there was a couple other things. I don't remember if I was trying to mention.
Yeah, I know there was one, and I know one of them was, you know, how long did it take you to learn the ELP songs, especially the ones that were complicated as far as the timing goes, and just learning how Keith played them, because you do play so much like Keith. And so that was my question, was, you know, how long and how hard was that to just learn the songs for Robert Berry's 3.2 band?
It was, well, let me break it down, because there are several phases of having to learn a song like that to do performances like we're doing. So there's a part of the task that is just learning the structure of the song, because some of these songs are long. I mean, you know, like a 9-minute song, it's a lot of section. So there's learning the structure of the song from beginning to end. And then there's the technical aspect of learning the notes, figuring out what the notes are, learning the notes. There's also what are the sounds that we're going to use? Are we going to try to have the sound be the same sound as the original album? Is it the sounds that Robert used on some of the updated versions? And Robert and I spent just countless hours on the phone for months. Well, do we want it to make it sound even more modern? Or are we trying to have it, you know, like today? Or we're going to try to keep it more 80s? like for the 3 songs, you know, the from that, it had to sound exactly like the record. But some of the other stuff, is it going to be more modern? Is it going to be more classic? You know, because Robert toured with Keith. He, you know, worked with Keith. He knew Keith. He knew exactly what Keith would do. Yeah. So sometimes it was, well, what would Keith do? We would be saying that. And Robert had more insight to that than I did. Or I would say, well, here's what he did on this record, that record. So it was months. It was months of work. And then as that's all kind of happening at the same time. And then one can't really start to practice the song for performance until all those pieces are learned, because I have to have all of the sounds. Then I have to have all the sounds programmed in the computer in the correct order. And as I go through, okay, well, this section of the song, what sounds am I going to play? And how long am I going to play it on the top keyboard, on the bottom keyboard? Am I going to play it on the rolly, the slidey thing? Am I going to play it on the keytar? And then
oh yes, you should talk about that too. That
it's I'll come back to that one. And then it's how long am I going to play out at that configuration for that section? How many sections can I get through in that configuration before I have to play different sounds? It's really about the sounds. So then where am I going to hit the patch change button to change all the sounds? And then when that happens, what am I going to play? So I have to do that for the entire song. So I can't even practice the entire song from beginning to end until all of that is figured out.
That's a lot of work.
And then I have to put it all in the iPad in sequential order, because when I'm performing, there's no time for things. This music is not simple. It is sophisticated music, and so it has to become automatic. So I don't want to learn something more than once. What I'll do is I go through on my iPad and the song, and I sketch out the song sections. I put the times, I put the key signatures, the time signatures, lyrics, because I'm singing back up on every song, lyrics, harmonies. I put all that in the iPad, and then I have to go through and I put in the patch changes. So part of my choreography is one button on the floor changes all the sounds, and the other button on the floor turns all the pages on the iPad. And when you're first starting, you hit the wrong button sometimes. I meant to change the patch, I turn the page, or I meant to turn the page and I change the patch. That's bad. So when all of that prep work is done, then I can finally start practicing up to speed. I can do all song segments, but I can't go from beginning to end until all that work is done. So it is months of work.
And you're not even really playing the song yet.
That's just to learn the song. That's just to learn it so that I can get in a room with the other guys in the band and we all start playing together. So and then we go out on the road, and the thing is, by the time we're done with the tour, it's really good because when we're practicing, because Jimmy lives in LA, I'm in New York, and Paul and Robert are in San Francisco. So we do as much work as we possibly can individually, and then we get together and we rehearse and cram it in and do the best we can, and then we take it out on the road. So it's a huge process. But I love doing it, but it's a ton of work, and you got to really want to do it.
Yeah.
So
you get such a reward, when you get it all done and you've done those months of work. Your reward is finally getting to the equipment and saying, I'm ready to play. Ready to start. Right. Yes, and that's the best part. That reward for all that hard work, all that prepping that you have to do. And that leads me to one question. With the coronavirus still keeping us in shelter, are you and 3.2 still practicing? And if so, are you doing this by streaming, with video, or I mean, how do you coordinate yourselves so that you can actually do a instrumental practice?
Oh, we don't practice, but with each other right now on the during this time. Like I practice at home. Jimmy is a session musician in LA, so he's still doing recording all the time for all kinds of, for him. He's got a solo album he's working on. He's doing all kinds of things. Robert is still producing records. He's making the new record. He's producing other people, so he's playing all the time. I know Paul's playing. We're all playing all the time. We're just not playing together right now. But once some people call it muscle memory, but really what happens is there's a lot of neurological synapses that once you do the work that we did before, those pathways are in there. They just need to be reactivated again. So we just, all we have to do is practice and get ready. When we go play again, it'll all be there, and we just have to learn the new material for the new record.
I can't wait for that. I really can't wait, because I'm going to bring Kleenex next time so that I'm prepared for those songs. But that's interesting how you guys are working through that. And as I always wonder with all the bands, how they're keeping up and keeping timing's tight still, knowing the changes are.
It's all
it is, and let me tell you, these work very well with you, which brings me to your guitar. And I'm going to put a picture of that up.
Right.
I love it when you and Paul start you just come together on stage, and you guys are just rocking it out, and you guys are just totally in sync, and your body language and how you're holding your equipment. And talk a little bit about what this is and how it works in your music.
Okay. So the instrument that Dyanne is referring to was the term keytar was coined back in the 70s or 80s, and it's basically it's funny. I always have to preface this. It's a strap-on keyboard, but as soon as people hear the word strap-on, then their mind goes somewhere. It's basically what they call it, a shoulder keyboard. It's a keyboard that somebody has bolted a guitar strap onto, so that you can put it on and walk around like a guitar player and not have to be behind a keyboard rig. So the particular instrument that I play is a Roland Axe Edge. I'm a sponsored artist with Roland. They're awesome, and I had it custom painted by a local artist here in New York. His name is Andrew.
Wow!
And
that, by the way, is beautifully done. I mean, you can't take your eyes off of that when it's sitting on the stand either.
It's a work of art, and I knew that, and the thing is, traditionally these keytars, they're fun for the keyboard player, but like I said before, you can never look as cool as a guitar player. But we're gonna try. So there's a local artist, and I really love his work, and I thought, I know he's the guy I want to paint my keytar. So I took it to him. He painted it. He did an amazing job, a beautiful job. It's the only one like in the world. So I'm glad we have a lot of pictures of it. And then I got it because Robert had said that when he toured with Keith and Carl before, they had a moment in the show where Keith had one and Carl came out with this rhythm stick, and they all went wrong. Do you remember that? So Carl.
I actually think I do. I think I saw something like that on YouTube. Yeah. I go to YouTube for a lot of these.
I'll send you a picture of Keith and Robert from that tour, and you can drop it in here so you can see.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. I would love to do that. I'd love to see it.
So Robert,
and
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, this gets you out from your keyboard little world, and it gets you on the stage, and you're out there and you're playing, and then Paul comes to join you, and it gets you more visibility, and you can use your body language and do your own showmanship on stage. And by the way, you do a very good job. They really make you want to rock out.
Well, thank you. It's you know what? It's just fun. It's just fun to be out in the middle of the stage instead of behind the keyboard rig all the time. So Robert said he wanted to have a moment like that in the show. So I got the axe edge. I had it painted. We figured out where in the show would be good for that. And then the company Line 6 is an equipment manufacturing company, and they just came out with a wireless audio. So I'm playing the sounds in the guitar, and it transmits a wireless audio signal to a receiver in my keyboard rig that patches in with the sound. So that way I can just walk around with the keyboard.
Yeah.
Which is just a joy to not have any wires or anything. And it's fun to go over there with Paul. I'm going to talk to Paul and Robert and say, I want to do that longer. Like, I want to play longer with Paul.
Yes.
He'll do it for a little bit, and then he'll just like wave at me and then just walk off. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. We were just,
Yeah, come on. We're jamming here, and we're, doing our thing. We can't stop now. And the audience is loving it. I mean, we're just all like, yes.
I'm going to make a note here. Maybe I could do some virtual Zoom practice with Paul, and we could do some more of that while we're all on lockdown. I'm going to write.
Oh, I would love that, because both of you guys work so well together, and you just mix and match. You both have different styles. And Paul is a little bit more reserved.
He's so good. He's just so good. Paul is so good.
Amazing guitarist, and I love just his style. He's a little bit more reserved, and when he plays, you can just feel that part inside of him coming out in his music and his solos, and you can feel that he's playing from his heart, and I love that.
What's really funny is that he'll make these faces when we're on stage, and at rehearsal he never made any faces. The whole time we were at rehearsal, he's like Robert Fripp from King Crimson. He's just over there playing his part. He's quiet. He's just looking at his pedal board. And then we go on tour, and he would be like, ah, he's making faces at me. And I would start laughing and cracking up. I'm like, who is this guy? I have never seen this guy. And I'm like, oh, and I'm,
the other side of Paul.
The side of Paul comes out on the stage, but I swear I never saw it before. It was
Oh, it must have been quite but you know what? It must have also sparked a lot of, I see opportunities with playing with Paul, because he's got another side to him, because he does.
That's right.
He does.
So anyway, I made a note here. Zoom with Paul. Maybe we can work on some stuff together while everyone's home. So
yeah, I think that it would be great if you guys could get out there together for either longer periods of time, or come out maybe a couple of different times, and do a different style maybe of you guys together, and just one is like rocking it, and maybe another one is just I don't know, more quiet, or more, I don't know. I'm just, my mind is just not, it's just something that came to my mind. But either way would be great. I mean, longer period of solos between the two of you, and or let's get out there more than once, And
well, those figures will be up to the band leader, Robert. I always call him the boss. I'm like, hey, boss, what do you want? So
hey, maybe you and Robert get together.
Oh, that would be fun.
Out with Robert. And then Robert's playing, his bass, or maybe he's playing the guitar. And you're out there with your keyboard guitar, and you guys, because I know both of you guys have great showmanship during the show, and it would also be very good together.
I have to you'll really appreciate this. And so will all the Keith Emerson fans out there. We, at our concert in Atlanta, we had, that was a segment of the show where I came out and I had the Axe Edge on, and we were playing, and we always try to be very conscious of having fresh batteries at every show. For the guitars need batteries, the mics need batteries, our wireless earbuds need batteries, my Roland guitar needs batteries.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I just missed the batteries on that one. So I got out there and I got about halfway through my solo on my guitar, and it died. I'm like jamming, and all of a sudden there's no sound, and it just died, and I didn't know what to do. So I just turned around. Started playing my keyboard rig from the back.
Oh, like Keith does.
Yeah, and because I didn't. Keith did, and you should have. I wish I had a video of the look or a picture of a look on Robert's face. He goes, oh! He goes, what made you do that? And I said, well, I was in the middle of the solo. My thing, I didn't know. I couldn't. And the way that stage was set up is I actually had to jump off the front of the stage and jump back on the stage. So I couldn't. There was no space to go around. I couldn't leave and jump out. There would have been. I had to just keep playing. So I just turned and started playing. He said, I've never seen anybody do that ever, other than Keith Emerson.
You can play backwards.
Apparently so. I didn't know I could until I just did it.
You should add that.
You know what?
Because
you're right. I should have.
That is brilliant. And I also think that that's something that is like a gift that you have. People, I can't imagine just trying to learn it on the right side of the keyboard. To do it on the backwards.
It was an in the moment thing. I had to keep going, and I couldn't tell what I was playing because it was like backwards. So I just kind of went with my ear and I had the pitch bend. I just reached over, and the pitch bend was this hand, and this hand I thought, well, I knew the notes I needed to play, even though they were backwards, and I just kind of started doing it. It must have sounded okay. I wish I had a recording of it, but people.
I wish I had seen it.
Went crazy, so it was all right. But it was a ton of fun. So yeah, now that's something I got to work into the show now.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you have a couple of different pages where people can go look at Colyer music.
Yeah. So my website is colliermusic.com. That's my website. And then on Facebook, it's Colyer Music Official, because I have a personal page, and then my artist page is Colyer Music Official. My band is called Circuline, so that's under Circuline Music. But the rest of my Colyer Music stuff is Colyer Music on Twitter, on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that was Andrew Colyer Music. You can,
Oh, I have to go check that out.
On the YouTube, I've got a playlist of a lot of the stuff we did with Robert, so that one's in there. You can check that out.
Okay, so people can go to Colyer Music or Colyer Music Official on Facebook, or find you on Twitter
or Instagram,
or Instagram, and follow you. Oh, there you go. That's
Colyer Music. That was some speed.
Yes, L-Y.
Colyer. Colyer. COLYER.
Colyer.
It's a common mistake that happens all the time, Zoe. I just make a joke out of
it. I know that I've been guilty.
I don't even care when it just happens.
But once
the French spelling. The French spelling is like the Collier's Dictionary or Collier's Encyclopedia, but mine is the Scottish spelling.
Are you Scottish?
Scottish, Irish, German, Pennsylvania Dutch, Cherokee Indian. I'm just the American mutt.
Wow. Wow. No wonder you're organized and able to do more than one page and or group. And I really encourage, I've looked at it. You have your biography in there, and it's a great read and really breaks down what you started out with and where you are pretty much today. And I really enjoyed reading that, and I encourage people to go check out your site, follow you,
Thank you.
And like your pages, because they are definitely actually lovable. I'm gonna put that little love, little love note on there. But yes, please, everybody.
Well, I appreciate if you're still watching. You know, we love Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Obviously, that's why we're here on this Titans of Prog page, and you know, our lives are all changed because of the gifts that Carl Palmer and Greg Lake and Keith Emerson left us, and you know, we're doing the best we can to honor their legacy.
I think that doing this keeps the ELP music alive, but also gives us the memories of them playing again. And, you know, especially Carl with his legacy band, watching Carl, I can't believe how he plays. I mean, and he is, I know, right?
Crazy.
I mean, and he does these things with the cymbals where, you know, he's doing all these little, exactly, and underneath,
right.
And he makes the most amazing sounds between the different cymbals, and just his little tricks there are fascinating. And I always get left with, how does he do that?
I want to give a shout out to Carl Palmer's artwork. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Last, I mean, that I knew, he had some drumsticks that had lights on them, and they would turn all the lights off, and he plays the drums in the dark and somehow captures it on film, and it is beautiful. It's really.
It is. Oh yeah. I have posted. I've been to a couple of his art exhibits and have been blown away. He has a John Wetton piece of art. Greg Lake's. He's got one that's titled for Greg Lake, and it works perfect. It looks like a piece of art that is Greg Lake. And of course, Keith Emerson, he actually managed now to add a bit of the monster.
Oh,
the big monster.
The keyboard, yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit of Keith. You can kind of see where the image just kind of looks, and it's beautiful. So he dedicated those three as a memory, and he has brain cell surgery and it looks like a skull. So I'll post a handful of the pictures that I took at the exhibit, and he just blows my mind. he just absolutely blows my mind how he said that he was at a show and he was in the middle of doing his drumming, and he noticed that the lights were kind of making the drumstick give off a little bit of light there. Yeah, when you're doing your thing. And he really was fascinated and loved it. And he thought, how can I do that? How can I make this? And he figured it out. And I think he even uses the lights on his kit.
Oh.
And I don't know that he uses anything on himself. I don't think so, but you never know, because he is also constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's through Scene 4. Do I have that right? Scene 4 is a company in LA that manages Carl's artwork.
Oh, okay.
And it is the guy who is in charge of making sure everything gets shipped and whatnot. Is Corey.
Okay.
And he is just, he's fabulous to talk to. And I'm giving a, big star and a hello to Corey.
Okay.
And he's been wonderful. He wants to please everybody, and he wants to make sure that you get exactly what you want. And he gets into the details of how things are shipped and what you do with it when it gets there, stretching and all these kind of things, because I think they're on canvas.
I don't remember. I saw them either at a Carl Palmer ELP Legacy show or maybe on the Cruise Edge. I don't remember, but
yeah, I saw the first exhibit I saw was when they were playing in LA. And they had the exhibit, I think it was the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just, and he talks about each piece.
Oh.
If you go to one of his exhibits, he'll tell you why he chose the titles and what they meant to him.
Oh, wow.
And I really love that. And then afterwards, people get up, mingle, talk to Carl.
Oh.
Carl takes pictures with you, and Corey's there for anyone who wants to purchase one of the canvases. And I can't say enough great things. I mean, it's great to be able to talk to Carl just so casually when he's not, looking at all these people that are trying to get his signature and say hi and meet him. I took a little longer than I was supposed to, but I learned, I know. Anyway.
All right. Well,
is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to make sure you say before we close?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to the shows. Thank you for being ELP fans. I feel very grateful to be a part of 3.2. I feel grateful. I feel lucky and grateful to been the guy Robert called. He could have called anybody, and he called me. So I'm grateful for that. I just hope that, I feel like our job, like you said, is to keep this music alive for future generations. And because it's magnificent, and they're all great. We've talked mostly about Keith because that's my influence and that's my role here. But Carl is amazing, and we haven't said much about Greg. But Greg, I'm gonna tell you right now, if it weren't for Greg Lake with his songwriting, there'd be no ELP. Each one of them brought their own unique contributions, because Keith was really classical, jazz, rock with these expansive things, but it was Greg's great voice and great songwriting that brought songs that could get played on the radio. You know, Tarkus, the instrumental version of Tarkus, which I've performed before, is unbelievable, but that's not going to get any radio airplay. You know, most people who want to listen to the radio, they don't want to hear. They'll be like, you can't dance to that. You know, they.
That's true. That's very true. It's the first group you listen to, and you go, I can't play this at a party yet.
Right, you can't.
I can't stop listening.
Right. Thank God for Greg Lake, because it really was the synergy between the three of them. You know, you have to the songs are what got them on the radio and what got them out in front of tens of thousands of people. And so it was such a great chemistry. You know, there were.
Greg was such a great producer.
Yeah.
I mean, he really had a knack for it. So.
And it's hard when
he got really involved.
When you get people who are very artistic and they're very creative and they're all headstrong, and you have to have a sense of. You have to have, I don't want to call, it's not a big ego, but you have to have a strong, healthy ego to be able to come up with all this stuff, to be able to practice your craft, to be able to become proficient at it. And then you have all these ideas and everybody wants to have their idea represented. And so it is work. It is work to show up, and write and create and craft these things and put it together and put out the records and then take it to the public. It's a ton of work. Yes, it's a ton of fun, but it's a ton of work. And, you know, they came along at a very specific time in history that we're not going to see again. So I think it's part of history, and it's important. It's important that people remember it. It's important they still listen to the music, and it's important. And that's why we feel like it's important for us to continue to play and bring this music to people live.
And, you know, and I thank all these people that have the different groups for ELP, you know, remembering Keith and Greg and the disc, and there's just so many out there. And it goes to show you how many people are still wanting to talk about ELP, wanting to ask questions or post pictures or post information, and then let people respond to that. That's ELP staying alive.
They were the first. A lot of people don't know this, or they don't remember, but Emerson, Lake and Palmer was the first band in the world to ever tour with a symphony orchestra. Did it damn near bankrupt them? Yes, but they were the first, and they did it because now you can take a band of a few people and fly around to different cities, and they already have the music, and you just play with the local bands, with the local orchestra. You know, they had a grand vision, and I think they did a phenomenal job.
Yes, I have to agree with that. And even their stage, the way they have their stage set up, I mean, like the picture from BSS, it's so huge on the stage. I almost go, okay, who printed that?
Right.
Because it looks like it's about 100 feet tall. And then with the columns, it fits for ELP style of play. Right. It just really works. And I think that, you know, the stage crew, the people that are behind that create the magic for the show, I think that they need to get a nod of thank yous too, because they worked really, really hard to get everything in place. And we forget about that.
There's an old saying in the theater world, and it's the bigger the front end, the bigger the back end. You know, so the bigger the crowd, you know, of course, you got the sound people, the techs, the people who are just hauling all the equipment, the lighting people, the staging people, the crew. You know, it wouldn't happen without those people. So, you know, thank you to all those people who do those kind of things.
Anything like to talk about before we close, or are we ready?
I think that's enough for today.
I want to say, on behalf of Backstage Pass Presents and the group Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Titans of Prague, check us out. We're a very active group, and we love to get people always thinking and commenting and sharing. It's just wonderful, the interaction that people have on the site. And I want to say thank you on behalf of this group, and I thank you very much for the time that you took to do this interview with me. And I think that people are going to have a real clear vision of who you are and what you represent and why. And you're also, by the way, the nicest guy to talk to. You're so very easy to talk to.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed meeting you, and just you're the kind of guy. Let's just hang out, have a beer.
Yeah, that's fun. Thank you. Dyanne. You're a sweetheart, and I appreciate your enthusiasm, and thank you for everything that you do for the Titans of Prague page and for your Backstage Pass. Did I pronounce it correctly? Your Backstage Pass Productions. You know, that's a great service, and it's easy to talk to you too. We just have a good time. We just get on here and chat and talk about cool stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much. And I will say thank you for everyone that watched this interview. And we hope that you were able to gain a lot of knowledge about what Andrew Colyer does. And again, you can always private message him or send him any more questions or any comments you may have after seeing this interview. It's all there for you. So on that, I'm going to say again, thank you, and take care. And I hope to have another interview time with you down the road when we're getting closer to getting back out there.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, Dyanne.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And I will say goodbye.
Bye.
And take care.
Are changed. Where are those words that you said when I believed in you? The line is drawn, my friend. I thought there would be a clue. I believe in you to wrap my head around. Do you think my inner peace? 'Cause I thought